Got some green lights. There we go. Hopefully we're going to be doing a bit better than we did last week where we had some unexpected stops. But so far everything seems okay. So, CodeZone episode 50, tile selection. Let's see how we do. We'll just wait a little bit at the start just to let some of the adverts play out. So we've got Gist99 or Moon, hello. We've got Nanoic, hello. We've got Alter Ego, hello. Did you win? No, you didn't, I'm afraid. Megetsub always wins. It's just the rules. You saved me from Godot, or Godot. Well, it's good, right? There's only one viable 2D sort of game engine thing that you should be using anyway, Nanoic. You know better than this. Right, in tonight's episode, I'm just going to just take that off my ear a little bit so I can hear a little bit what's going on. William Mist, hello, first time chat. Johnny's here as well, hello. And Megetsub, yeah, I know you're here. You're always here, Megetsub. It's good. It's reliable. Right, so where are we up to? This is episode 50, and I think tonight marks a little bit of a milestone, not just in terms of it is the 50th episode of CodeZone, but we might actually be writing some code properly tonight, because over the last week, I have finished off some of the loose ends of the boilerplate, which we've been grinding through bit by bit in these episodes. And tonight we can start focusing on the bits that matter. We're going to actually start trying to select some tiles from our static tile source. Nice one, Alter Ego there. Speedy's here, hello. Skipping 48 and 49 since I discovered this yesterday. Okay. Well, I think we only just started really with 46, I think, this time around. Season 2 went to 46. Today we implement dark mode. No. We're going to go even brighter today, I think. We'll have as white as possible, I think. Totally bright. I'm just going to quickly glance at some of the discords. I've had a few things pop up just to make sure it's not too important. Good. Right. Coding gods in their elements. No, I think that's a mistaken identity. Hello, how are you? I am okay. I'm good, thanks. I've got my glass of water. Yeah, HDR GUI, that's a thing, isn't it? Maybe we should be doing it like that. You need sunglasses. Look how cool you are using my application. You need sunglasses to use it. Right, so as usual format, I'll briefly go over some of the sort of more significant changes that I've made so far, and then we'll look at trying to implement them. And the nice thing tonight is I'm hoping to demonstrate why have we been faffing about with all these shared pointers, why have we been faffing about with sort of linking bits of the workspace to other bits of the workspace, and hopefully tonight we'll see a bit of a demonstration as to why it was worth spending all the time doing this boilerplate. And really, so we sort of left it working on this static tile source, which is going to be the way to create a tile atlas. And it was left at this point. We just started talking about all of the properties, in particular that WX Widgets was using for its property grid control. And we looked at the mega macro and some of the shortcomings of that control and that approach. And it was a good place to end it, really, because I hadn't really thought through what I was going to implement in terms of how do we universally address an asset in this application. So I've come up with the concept, for now, of something called an asset link. And it's so fundamental to everything in the application that it actually exists within the workspace. And so actually it's defined in work object. Here we go. Asset link. And it's just a structure with this could be, at the moment I'm assuming it's an image asset, but of course it could be anything. So I've got an ID to this particular asset pack, and I've got an ID to the asset itself. And I've also got a string link form, and all of the assets take the form of asset pack some name. So we have two ways of identifying the asset within the application. Numerically, which is nice and quick for accessing vectors in an optimal way, and sort of in a human-readable way too, which I think is how we'll do things within the GUI environment. So it's the job of the GUI designer now and the GUI tools that we present to the user to somehow reflect one either this way or that way. It has to somehow always keep those intact. I have an equality operator. because the way the WX property grid works when it wants to store these things is it's got to be able to perform some equality check for it doesn't matter, it's got an equality. Alright, so I'm going to take that back out of there so it doesn't cause us any problems. The downside to this approach is there's no way to know if the asset is bad. So what if the pack ID is 0, which is the first element in a vector of packs, and the asset ID is 0, which is the first image in that asset pack? Well, at the moment, it's okay. That's fine. That's actually a genuinely valid asset that's being referenced here. So I thought, well, the more modern way to do this is to have something like a standard optional. And you might, if you're on the Discord last night, might have seen me ranting and raving about it. And so this is the solution I've come up with for now. And yes, it's a good old C type def being mixed in with some modern C++. But what this allows me to do is actually have something passed around that looks and smells a bit like an image asset link, but if it's invalid, it simply doesn't exist. And it's quite nice that way, because then everything that ever uses an asset link can check to see if it's valid, and if it isn't, it can use it in a safe way instead of just crashing out. Right, let me just catch up with the chat a little bit. Shared pointers, yes. Got them all over the place at the moment. Voxel's here, hello. Sean, hello. Oh, everybody's saying hello to everybody else. I actually did it. Yes, I did. I actually did it, Voxel. And it's actually working out very nicely. It seems to be a solution that's I'm going to run with for a little bit. And so standard optional is typical modern C++ template naffness, basically hiding pointer creation in the background. It allows me to have an object which is also represented by the state of null, as in this case, it's an invalid asset link. It's just the way I'm trying to get this in my design is that by existing, the image asset has to be valid. So we'll leave it with that, and we're going to run with it for a bit. If it turns out that it's causing me more headaches than it's worth, then I'll look at something a bit more sophisticated. One of the reasons I've gone with this nasty type def is simply I originally started with just the image asset link and only made it standard optional when and where I thought it was necessary, but I ended up with all of these contradictory logic paths in various parts of my program, and actually doing it this way has just sort of tidied it all up. It's just always just a nice way to deal with this particular instance. So I quite like it. I'm sure all the C++ aficionados will be already shouting at me behind my back on the Discord server. When next episode of Back to Basics coming? Well, what particular basic would you like to see? That's the thing. Ah, hello, Bixie. Bixie's here. It's what the cool kids call d-d-d. Is it? Right. I am going to... so what do we do next? So image asset link gets created. So I had to create some tools then, because lots of things across the workspace, everything uses asset links one way or another. So in the workspace object, I created some utility functions. Let me find them. Here we go. So the first one is here. Create asset link. So there's two ways to create it. One is either with the identifiers, or one is with the string. Now the identifiers is pretty easy. It can just look at the size of the vectors and make sure that the index is actually valid. It then goes away and constructs this asset link object with the pack ID, the asset ID, and goes and constructs the string form of the link using the friendly name specified with the objects. That was another sort of little design tweak I made to the work object. Work object now has sname as a public type by default. Everything is going to be able to be friendly name addressable. So I thought, instead of doing that uniquely per all of the subtypes, I'm doing it per object now. So I've got two methods of creating. Hang on, we get some having a go already. Modern C acceptance, ridicule the feature, give the feature a try, become feature user. You know what? There's some truth to that. The second form is a little bit more involved. If you're passing in a string link, it then needs to go and try and find the actual asset. Now, why have we gone to have the effort of having this standard optional? Well, if the IDs provided to the create asset link are invalid, then I can actually just nicely return this null opt thing. Who cares what that is? It's a thing. But it does allow me to still pass around this image asset link type quite validly, so the program doesn't collapse, it doesn't crash, and anything that's using this image asset link can then go and check for the validity of it. It's like in the old days you'd have an isOK method of the asset link class, and maybe we'll end up resorting to that if this just becomes a little bit too polluted. Same applies for doing the string. If it can't convert the string into some sort of valid link, it can fail and bail early and return null opt. This isn't quite finished yet, so I'll leave it on the screen, but the eagle-eyed amongst you will actually discover there is a bug there. So you can actually put in some invalid links, and it will still generate a legitimate object. So yes, still some work to do with that, but I'm not actually using that as a feature really just yet. But I'm aware there's a problem there. Made it in more or less. Yeah, we've not only just started Zen Mystic. Yeah, we're not too far off. The stream is just catching fire. Oh, okay, good. Oh, Travis, hello. Right, Bixie has sent me a message. Excellent. Okay, right. So this is take 5. Now, Bixie, I've not listened to this, so I'm going to play it live for everybody to hear. Are we ready? This is the latest version of Bixie's theme tune. Shall we give it a go? If nobody in the chat says we need to listen to this Bixie masterpiece right now, then I'm not going to bother. So I'm going to keep an eye. Oh, there we go. That's better. Thank you. Yeah, Bixie, you had to do it as well. Right. Okay. This might be a bit loud. No idea what we're going to listen to. Here we go. Are you ready? Let's have a go. Yes, I like that. In fact, you know what? We're going to have that again. Yeah. That's awesome, Bixie. Yes, we will negotiate your fee later. Right, so the idea of that theme tune is we're going to have a little bit of an opening sequence, I think, to these streams. It's always a little bit odd that I have to just sort of start the stream like that. Exactly, we can annihilate the mega macro with that kind of theme blasting away permanently on repeat throughout the background of the stream at full volume. Is it Visual Studio Community Edition? Yes, it is. Yep. This is a just bog standard vanilla Visual Studio Community Edition. So the image asset link. So you'll start to see these things sort of peppered throughout everything because basically it's a 2D graphics editing tool. It's a 2D graphic link to something that's in hardware on the graphics. It's just fundamental. So I'm playing with it at the moment. And then we created this static tile source, and we threw this in at the last minute of the last episode. And the idea of this was to generate the tile atlas. And it took quite a bit of effort to get to this point. So enough for stirring up some code. Let's run the application and see where we're at. Oh, it's rebuilding something. What did I press? This is always nerve-wracking. Obviously, I clicked something in the middle of somewhere. Once it's building, I'm going to have a drink. Do you know what we should? We should have. It should be Bixie's build theme, right? Whenever we're building it, we should get the music playing. Can somebody rig me up a macro in Visual Studio that makes that happen, please? Do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if somebody actually did that and posted it on the Discord server later on. Because I know you used to be able to get it to play different songs when on different compile results. So if you got a successful compile, you get it go ding, and if you got a bad compile, you get it do 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 do. I've seen that before, but actually pressing the compile button, could we get it to actually play an MP3 file? I think maybe. It's taking its time. I must have changed something really fundamental. There we go. MS was like you, Javid. I had to ditch Visual Studio. It kept crashing again and again and again. Well, I've never sort of experienced it crash. Obviously, I've said that now, so it probably will do tonight. We now have here the default empty workspace. So we've got an asset pack and a static tile source. So let's add an asset. Let's go into here and go up one, assets, and we'll pick we'll pick this one. So this is an asset. We've now loaded it into memory and onto the GPU. So don't forget, this is all GPU rendered now, so nice and slick and fast. Now the whole point of the static tile source was to become something that we can select these assets out of. So I'm going to go to my static tile source. And at the moment, it's a rather crudely not finished grid. Tidy that up later. Make it work first, then make it look pretty. But I'm going to go down to my image asset property here, open up the image asset selection dialog, which we worked on, and select the asset. Double click. And you can see it's loaded it now into the static tile source. Now, one of the reasons I've gone to all this effort of keeping all the properties dynamic and having all of the shared pointers is the following. I wanted the ability to sort of very dynamically interact with these properties. So I can just simply make my grid bigger. So how many tiles do I need? Don't know. Let's make the actual tile size a bit bigger first. So we can up this until we get to what looks about the right size. Let's zoom right in. Have a look. That's probably too big, 33. And then we can do it on this one. Probably 32 by 32, these, I'm guessing. We could type that in directly. So there we are. We've now mapped onto some tiles. Oh, and hey, look, we weren't too far off on the grid. So if we make that go over to the end, and how many tiles down have we got? Keep going. Right. There we go. So in principle, we've now got a way we can select these things out of this tile source. I think that's pretty cool. Speedy likes this version of the theme. Well, it's got the Speedy seal of approval. Magetsup. Diego discovered recently you can visualize non-static arrays in Visual Studio's debugger by typing this in. Right, okay. Well, if you discovered it and you can't repeat it, then that's just an LK99 situation, isn't it? Yeah, it is Bixie, not Pixie. I'm very happy to have caught your stream, YouTube. Oh, very good. Thank you. So I think this is pretty cool, and let's just see if the theory works. If I go to the asset pack again, now we've got already the one asset in there. Let's add another asset. Let's add the Mega Sprite, which is this one, which I know has slightly different tile sizes. Let's say I wanted to change my static tile source. Hopefully this kind of work. Go to Mega Sprite. Yep, change the image, and we can see the grid no longer lines up with what we want. It looks like they're a bit too wide. I'm going to say about there, maybe, and let's zoom in, make sure we can see the individual cells. Probably about there. 26 by 36. It's an unusual size, and the number of tiles is certainly not that. Let's make those a bit smaller. So across, we've got plenty of tiles. We've got some empty tiles on this particular sprite. Let's fill that one up there, and we'll go on this side, make it smaller. There we go. So with no sort of real effort, we can now sort of chop up. And we might be able to add some algorithms to this. I think there will be a tools section where what if we wanted a tool which then split this all into individual sprites? Well, these are the sort of things we can throw in, and potentially we can even make them scriptable too. So we can have a whole armada of different ways of dealing with 2D data. I've chosen specifically in this instance to use sprites as a source. That's because sprites are nice and visual. They make compelling stream viewing. But the way I'm going to construct actual scenes is not necessarily always going to use sprites. I actually want the cells themselves to be, well, kind of typeless. And that's useful if you wanted to store an array of digits or an array of booleans or an array of characters or some other sort of information. But we've now got this facility to select specifically a tile. And I think tonight we're going to focus on... Oh, this should be interesting, because we've... this is one of the reasons we use these shared pointers everywhere. I've got the 2 static tile sources now. But let's say in this particular window, I change the size of a tile, like this. Okay, it's clearly wrong, but it's automatically applied to every instance where this thing exists, and that's sort of the beauty of this shared pointer weak pointer relationship that I've been abusing throughout the tool. That's all handled for me now by the boilerplate. That's quite nice. And you might actually think, well, why do you ever need 2 windows open? What I'm hoping for is that when we're designing the levels, this actually becomes sort of the tile selection window, and you may have those open side by side. We may also get rid of the log. I think the log it's probably not necessary. So this can become sort of a palette selection tool as well. It's all sorts of things. So I think what I'd like to try now is how do we actually tie this into selection? So I think it's going to be about sort of multiple selection of things, because I think you never just want to select one cell. It's better to select multiple cells. Certain tile atlases contain multiple tile images. Trees typically are an example, of full buildings. And you don't want to be selecting it tile by tile. You want to create some sort of object. And the scope there, then perhaps we want to create some sort of stamping tool where you can save these predefined objects as part of this static tile source. That might be some sort of addition that we have to this, a list of ready-made objects selected out of it, so you can quickly access them when you're placing them in your asset design. Your thumbs are too big for your Google keyboard. Get smaller thumbs. Could collapse the log by default. Yeah, I think the log's just kind of in the way now. I think it might get more useful when we start getting into the scripting side of things, which I've started having a thought about as well. But we're not there yet with how that goes together. Dragon Eye, hello. Not seen you for a while. Good to see you. And Kanawanagagasaki. Kanawanagasaki. Kanawanagasaki. Okay. I think we got there in the end. So the next step is to actually allow sort of multiple selections in this tool. Now the tool I'm currently using is a derivative of the image view and the grid view class that we've created earlier. It's called a grid image view. And I think at the moment this doesn't really allow any sort of selection, but perhaps that's what we need to adjust now on that control to allow us to have multiple types of selection. Chicken. Does it mean chicken? The serialization aspect to all of this as well is now automatically handled for us. Again, it was worth investing all of that time in doing the boilerplate to make sure that these additions can happen relatively painlessly. And we can go and have a look at a file I prepared earlier, and hopefully it does sort of open. If I go to open here, no, I don't want to save that workspace. Now we can open this workspace instead. I don't think it's any more interesting. I can have a look at the asset pack. So there's all the 4 assets in, and the static tile source. Open new. Double click. Was the mega sprite. Now, if we go and have a look at how this was serialized, we can see we've got the main workspace, the properties for the project, and we've got 1 image asset pack, which contains the 4 image assets, and we've got 1 static tile source, which contains the properties of the tiles, the width and the size, the friendly name, but also the asset link. And that was what we started off with. That's the asset pack ID and the asset ID linked to that static tile source. So this serialization has now also happened automatically for us. We don't need to sort of manually make that happen. Of course, we need to make sure that the work object knows how to serialize its properties, but the environment is taking care of it on our behalf. So let's start to look at how do we do multiple selections then. I guess that's where we're at. And I don't have sort of any code to go with this. We're sort of going to figure some of this out as we go. The tool, the viewer behind the static tile source, if I go up to the static tile source editor, which is here. Fundamentally, it inherits from two things. One is this grid, multiple inheritance. Yeah. I'll get some flack for that later too. This grid image view, which is the image view with a grid drawn on top of it, and this editor interface. Did we talk about editor interface in the last episode? I think we probably did, but it was a way to get sort of the workspace pointer to everything that's like a GUI component. Turns out all the GUI components have a very similar, everything that we're going to have sort of in a tab has a very similar interface. It needs a link to the workspace and a link to the work object that it represents. But it also needed this work object updated function, which allowed us to change the properties and notify that particular tab that the properties have changed. And if we go and have a look at one of these for, say, the static tile source, here it is, the work object updated. We can see that, firstly, it's got to have a valid static tile source, which it goes and gets, and that's the shared pointer. Well, it's a weak pointer being converted to a shared pointer. We can then go and set the properties of this editor based on the work object's properties. Fine. And then we can use the standard optional link asset here. And again, we're checking for its validity before we use it. I don't need to, oh yes, I do need to lock the workspace. So it does add a bit of sort of overhead to using objects, but it allows you to make sure that you're only ever using the objects in a valid way. And that's quite useful when you're looking at a GUI application where your data is spread all over the place and everything is interlinked. GUI editors like this, and I've built a fair few of them by now, do tend towards a bit of the spaghetti. It's just the way of things. You need access to a lot of information rather globally, but at the same time you're fighting trying to use like big global variables and singleton patterns. So I think this is a nice compromise, and I think that the C++ language handles it well. You may have started to notice there's very, very few raw pointers of any description that we've used so far. In fact, the only time you'll see raw pointers really is in the WX widgets interface, which as we discussed in the first episode, they're not really raw pointers. They're actually WX widgets sort of shared pointers in disguise. Excuse me. Is this the data structure you showed in another video? Yes, it's my custom data file type. In fact, it's exactly the same. It's using that file verbatim from that video. It's not YAML. It is. It's called OLC data file type. I found it. I just find it a very convenient way of doing things. I'm not too bothered about data being human readable on the whole. But sometimes it's convenient. It's a nice way to make sure that your file's being serialized correctly. You can go in and visually verify it, and you can make little changes to hack things if necessary. But on its own, it doesn't quite work because you get sort of these mysterious type equals 4. Only the program reading this will know how to interpret how to read it, which I'm fine with. Simple is best for sure, unless you need robust. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how robust my file format is. I think it's reasonably robust because it basically resolves everything to 3 simultaneous types. It's either a real number, a natural number, or a string, and those 3 can all be convertible readily, easily. So you can actually read any data type as any of those types, which I think is quite a nice feature. Don't have to faff about then sort of trying to work out what type things are. Good evening, Zals. Good evening, Rosso. Someone clip that and take it out of context that Java doesn't care about humans. Oh, I do care about humans. I thought GUI was the individual pixels for sprites. GUI is graphical user interface. It is buttons and widgets and list boxes and all that this sort of junk. Let's find something on here. We've got, this sort of thing. Buttons and drop-down boxes and all that kind of thing is GUI. And I use this utility, WX Form Builder, to sort of prototype my GUIs and produce some skeleton code, which I can then go and customize in my application itself. The nice thing about WX Form Builders is also a reasonably good example of sort of the cutting edge of WX widgets. Pretty much it's always kept up to date. This version was released, I think it was February this year, and it's got lots of different tools. I just find it a nice way to explore the WX widgets library kind of interactively. What I will say is I don't like the WX widgets ribbon tools. I thought about trying to use them to give us that modern look, and then it occurred to me that I just don't like the ribbon tools even in any of the Windows applications. For me, don't get them. I don't understand why you need them. What was wrong with the toolbar like this and a menu? So is this going to be OLC PGE Studio 23? Right, okay. There has been some speculation about what is this really going to be. It's not going to be a game editor. I'm not sort of looking to compete in that space at all. It's really just asset and data manipulation tool. And I've got some plans for it for a custom project of my own. That's why I want a nice editor, because I also want to sort of go into PGE3, and PGE3 is very much more vector oriented, on top of everything that PGE2 can do. So it's a tool with a purpose, but it's not going to be like a Unity or anything like that. It's not designed to sort of handle sort of object to object interactions. That's not what I'm going for. Right, so selecting things, we need to work out how that works. Now, part of the problem is I started writing some of this code about 4 months ago, and I've already completely forgotten how it works. So we may have to fumble about a little bit to try and squeeze in a selection of things. So let's have a look at what is a grid image view to begin with. We'll have a quick look through it. We load a background image, so there's not much here. It overrides by default the grid view, and all it does is on the onRender function draw the image. Now you'll see nowhere in this particular tool does it draw the grid. That's because the base class here, the grid view, rather confusingly overrides the onPostRender function. So all of these panels have 3 functions: pre-render, render, and post-render. And it's the post-render function that actually goes in and draws the grid. And here it's doing some mathematics of the affine transform to work out the infinity grid. You might have seen that in one of the early episodes. It can draw a grid with no particular bounds. Oh, because there'll be people here that don't fully understand actually why is this significant. Well, there's a grid, but everything in this editor is like fully transformable too, and should still function as normal, which I think is a nice, powerful feature. I don't know why you might want to rotate things like your tile maps in real time like this, but you can, if that's what you wanted to do. So the actual grid is drawn here. Now, the grid view itself doesn't particularly do anything at the moment except tell you where the cursor position is. In fact, it gives you a handful of different cursor positions. It gives you the free world cursor position, which is where is your cursor in world space in that view. The snapped world cursor is, as you'd expect, it's the corner of a particular cell. In fact, I'll go open it up again. Here, the yellow rectangle, as you can see, is the corner of a particular cell. So that's a snapped world position. So the world space is where the white cursor is, the standard arrow. The yellow square is where the snapped cursor is, which is going to be very useful for when we're drawing lines and polygons and things later on. And the green shaded square is obviously which cell is highlighted at that given time. But we need to get that information out of here and sent to something useful. Let's have a look. Full-blown editors like Unreal and Unity, yeah, they have their place, and I think they're great for people that just want results properly, really quick. I mean, half the fun of doing these projects for me is this, right? I just like doing it. Can you use WX widgets in C? No, not really, sadly. You could, of course, C works in a C++ environment, so you could just ignore the C++ bits. But it's very much an object-oriented library. Do you always build your GUI applications in C++? Yes. C# to me, and a controversial opinion time, kind of shot itself in the foot. C# was actually quite usable and friendly when it was just basic WinForms, and I know that that's there still, but it's going, isn't it? They've dropped it. And now the way to do GUIs in C# is like doing GUIs in everything else. It's multiple levels of XML abstraction and linkages between different programming languages in order to get the display separated from the code that works behind it. No, you can use GTK. Yeah, Dragonite. Dragonite's right for well, yeah, you wouldn't use GTK on Windows unless you were troubled. It's okay. I don't understand all this. I gave up making my RPG. Oh dear. Oh, that's a shame. After mucking around with CMake all day, I will never touch it willingly. I agree. WinForms is actually very useful. The reason it needs to exist is, you know, I work for a business during the day, and we often write applications that are necessary but need to be done quickly, not necessarily for customers. Sometimes it's for internals. You just want to throw a quick GUI together. You just want text boxes and buttons and list boxes and things like that. And you don't want to have to bog yourself down with making sure it's suitable for all devices and making sure different screen resolutions and all of that stuff. I get it, it's got its place. Sometimes you just want a grid that you can throw a text box on and say, right, I'm going to enter a file name in there. And that needs to still exist. If all of these environments drop that simplicity, there will be new programmers, hobby programmers, amateur programmers, child programmers, all struggling to get started. WinForms reminds me of Visual Basic 6 GUI. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Nothing wrong with that at all. It has its place, and even Visual Basic's kind of going away from that. And you'll end up with people just trying to use the Visual Basic built into Excel and Access, which is not the right way forward, is it? Anyway, that's my 2 pence. I'm not allowed to have opinions on the internet anymore. I keep getting told that on the Discord server. It's got its place. I mean, you're never going to make very sexy looking applications which are going to look cutting edge and then potentially be cross-platform and work on mobile devices and tablets. And you know, those things do have their places, but I think you need that simple tool as well, just to get you going with ideas and quick concepts. Bring back basic. Right. We'll see. We'll see about that. Right. Okay. This is where the grid is drawn anyway. So this information here, I've kind of got these overridable functions, which they're fine. They get called, and they get called with this each time. But I think what would be more useful is to generate some sort of event, perhaps, and actually send that event upstream. I've got to think a bit more about how does this application work in the context of... Sorry, how does this control work in the context of the application? And what I'm envisaging, I'm just going to pull it up again so I can play with it whilst I'm thinking about this. Let's say I've got... let's just separate that from there to there. Let's say on the left here, I've got my... regular image editor. Can I pull that over? Come on, grab it. There we go. I've got my sort of level editor here on the left, and on the right I've got my selection of particular tiles. And what I want to be able to do is just sort of go select you and then paint you, and then select you, or a selection of things in here, and then paint them in this one. Of course, aligned to tile boundaries. So somehow I need to get this selection information out of here into the whole sort of workspace, because you might have several different sources here. So you can only have one selection source that's active at any given time and one paint source in order to paint it into the particular level. There's some of the complexities you get when you've got these sort of multiple window IDE things going on. A certain Mr. Space Telescope has arrived. I'm starting to write back office apps in WinForms. Users love it. They get what they need fast, and I don't need them to ask questions. Yeah. yeah, I'm glad you're still using WinForms, but I mean, officially it's gone, and the sort of replacements are not looking good. Not to me anyway. And you know, who cares? Who's got getting old, Javid? Who cares what you think, you boomer? You know, that's that's something I get every day. Anyway, okay, we've stirred at this grid long enough. So at the moment, the intention is you just simply override this particular function and use it as necessary. But I need to get that information out now to something higher up. I need to get it to the rest of the application. So how can we go about doing this? Well, as part of the navigation panel, I did start to throw together a derivative of a WX command event called a mouse event. And it's not actually used this. This is a bit of ghost code. It's here. It was an idea I started messing about with but never took anywhere. But it's captured a lot of the syntax that we need to handle a custom event in WX widgets. And you can go in WX widgets and go and create an event from scratch. But by far, it is easier if you can use something that already exists, because then you can just use the existing tools to move it around the platform with very little effort. The only downside is WX widgets, true to form, you need all of these horrible macros everywhere to start making it work with its environment, because it needs some sort of like inner reflection, don't we all, to get things to work. You need macros in the CPP file as well. So I think what I might start doing is basically I'm going to hijack this code and I'm going to somehow leverage it into the grid view, excuse me, to notify the main application that we have selected some cells. Oh, dear me. And maybe this is a use for the log, because right now I've got no sort of visual recognition to do that. So perhaps that's what we can try. We can create a custom event that says I've selected a tile in my static tile source, and we'll send the main application the coordinates of that tile. So a quick glance at the chat. Yeah, Speedy's a big WinForms C# user. I thought you were using Visual Basic a little bit, Speedy. I mean, my first language was BBC Basic. The BBC Model B Plus I had. I was very fortunate to have that computer. Right, so I'm basically going to steal this and just refactor a big chunk of it, I think. I might even not even attempt to refactor it just now, just for the sake of getting things to work. Just start to see if I can throw the event and then actually handle the event. Because that's sort of the bit that I'm a little bit fuzzy on how to do. That's why this is hijacked from a sort of a similar editor I've worked on in the past. Thinking. Yeah, okay, I think that's what I might do. Try and use this one. So this is actually used nowhere at the moment. It's meant to be used by nav panel, which is the sort of transformed view panel. It's the bit that gives you the affine transform, but it doesn't actually do anything in there. So instead, I might just hijack it and use it in one of the derived panels. I'll use it in this grid image view. And for the time being, I think what we'll try is simply if we click in a grid image view. So is there a function I can override? Let's have a look. Let's go back to the nav panel. Let's have on mouse left down, which I guess is default click. I'm just going to steal you. And this is where I've already forgotten the layout of my own program here. I'm just going to throw you in there. And hopefully you're accessible somehow. Yeah, it kind of looks like it might be okay. So let's go and make a body for you. There we go. Oh, why have we got some red squiggles? This is a little bug with said there was no bugs with Visual Studio. This is one. Why does it put it as a navigable? It's not. Doesn't always quite get it quite right, that bit. It's a grid image view. But I think I need to call this for the base class first, because I do actually want to service on mouse left down. Let's have a look at see how we get to mouse left down being called. Because if I go into the event handler on mouse left down, the event handler doesn't do anything. I just don't actually think it does anything, to be honest, at the moment. Yeah, it doesn't actually call any of these functions. But this potentially is a place to create that event and call it in the right place. Okay, I think I'm beginning to get a feel for it now. Where was the mouse move function? There's all sorts of debug trash in there from a while ago. Mouse move, mouse move, mouse move. So on mouse move, it's called peak definition. Doesn't do anything. But where was I when I got these the cursors? Was that actually in nav panel? Oh, it was in grid view, wasn't it? Excuse me. Yeah, it was in grid view. Already lost grid view. Yeah. I took out all of the sort of navigation location stuff. I took that all out of the navigation panel and put that in the grid panel because I felt that grids were not really a visible thing. They were more of a sort of a navigation thing, and the nav panel was more. Yeah, I've got this mixed up. So mouse move happens there. I think what we want to do now is hopefully. I just think we want to just directly call on mouse left up from the fundamental event at the bottom. So I'm going to steal you just for the time being. Now let's go back to our nav panel. On mouse move. I think actually I don't want I want just that line, but I need the screen pos bit too. Right. Okie dokie. Yes, yes. Okay. And now in event on mouse left down, which is the one that we're interested in. Okay, let's get rid of you because we don't care about changing the affine views. What's happening? So, after all that confusion, event on mouse left down is called when I press the left mouse button on a navigation panel. I then get the screen position of that. And now my navigation panel has a certain pixely game engine-y feel to the back end of how it works. So one of the features I can have is actually have the thing look pixelated. So if my pixels are actually bigger than screen pixels, I want it to behave differently. So that's why I have this specific if the fixed screen size mode is enabled. It doesn't mean anything to us today. I'm not bothered about forcing a redraw, but what I do want to call is on mouse left down with the inverted screen pos position going through the affine transform, which gives us our world mouse pos coordinate. And I can also at this point, for some reason, I don't know why, but for a mouse event, WX very conveniently lets you know if the shift button or the control button is held. I think that's brilliant. It seems like an odd thing to throw into a mouse event, but it's there. I'm noticing the chat sort of running off in the background. Anyone here start programming after 2010? Probably not as many. Oh, good. Well, at least we've got some old hats and some fresh blood in the chat too. Right. Okay. So this on mouse left down is going to call on mouse left down of some derived class. Now, hopefully, it's going to be this one here, grid image view. It goes and calls it here because we've overridden this virtual function. So, in order to test that, have I actually got a log already here? I don't think I've put a logger in to the image view. Let's go and steal a logger and throw that into the code. Yeah, mainframe. Mainframe.h. So I have the sort of this, my logger is a singleton, don't forget, so all I need to do is include this line somewhere, and I can access the log functions, and they should just miraculously appear at the bottom of the screen. So let's go back now to the static tile source editor, which is here. Oh no, so the grid view. Grid image view. .h. There we go. And I probably do I need to include the logger file? Probably. I should include, what was it? Util logger. And so now I can just, in grid image view, when we click this, log.debug test. Right, this probably won't work because a lot of stuff just happened there, so we'll see what happens. This is where we need our building theme. You did a oh, hang on, I've been specifically pinged. I did a soldering to fix a design issue on a surface mount PCB. Oh, very good. Oh, it's always satisfying when you actually solder something and when it actually works. For those that don't know in the chat, sort of a good part of my day job is actually electronics design. So I actually do design circuit boards and things and have to populate some of my prototypes myself. So I'm not too bad with a soldering iron. The other day, though, I was almost confronted with the possibility of having to reflow a ball grid array, which, yeah, you don't want to go down that route. Don't be reballing your own chips. No, never again. Let's just see what happens here, because I want to run this, and if I click, there we go, look at that, right? So, all ye of little faith, all of those that thought I was just mumbling my way through that, we're now clicking within this grid image view control, and it is returning some information which we can output to the log. In fact, let's get it now to output specifically the coordinate. Now, fortunately, the coordinates are an OLC VF2D type, so it should just be a case of doing vworldpos.str like that. Now, this is world pos, don't forget, not necessarily tile pos. How many tiny designs can I fabricate? The smallest I can solder comfortably is sort of probably QFN packages, SC75s with 6 pins. I find a bit fiddly. I wouldn't really be more comfortable going down to sort of 04, 02, and for that I definitely need a lens. So let's click on here. So there's the world coordinate. We go up here. So 0, 0 is basically that point, and you can see we start going negative. But this is in world space. Now, each of these tiles in my static tile source, if we go and have a look, so hopefully this is all untested. It starts to come together. As I zoom in here, ooh, what size is that? So 13, 14, 15, 16, yeah, so we've actually specified that the tile size here is 16 by 16 pixels. So what we can see is as I go across, it's in world space, remember, not tile space. So this one here should be about 16, 16. So it's actually, it's kind of just worked because everything's sort of been designed to be consistent with each other. If I go and change this tile size, let's change it to 8 by 10. Oh. Let's try and click somewhere I can actually change it. 8 wide by 10 high. Let's make that more obvious. 8 by 100 high. Yeah, there we go. Big cells. So the world space coordinates should tick over to 100 when I get down here. Yeah, and it does. Nice. So we've got a world coordinate in pixel space. To convert that now to sort of tile space, of course, we need to sort of integer divide that by the size of the tiles. No, 7 nanometer. No, Magetsu. Yes, stick to software, Magetsu. That's what I'm going to say. When I was in university, as doing some postdoctoral work, one of my colleagues in the laboratory I was in was actually fabricating their own silicon. and they were nowhere near nanometers. We just didn't have that kind of tech. But we did have a fairly good clean room, and he would spend most of the nights in there making chips to receive ultrasonic signals. So he was actually looking at sort of surface deformations and sorting them all out. It was very interesting stuff. Right, so that's encouraging that we've now got this grid image view sort of being called in the right place. But what I want to try and do is spew out an event that the system can then go and respond to. Because this isn't yet an event. This is happening in real time with the mouse being clicked. That's a bit sketchy when it comes to doing things with GUI. I really want to sort of now shove that into the event system of the rest of the GUI framework so different things can respond to the event happening as required. So where was that event? It was called a mouse event or something like that, wasn't it? Mouse event. We want to throw one of these, I think. Now that's the bit that I'm a little bit unsure of. I think we're going to need to construct one of these. Command type, so I'm guessing that's these here. Let's try that. So the mouse is actually GUI navigable mouse event. Let's try creating one of those in this location. So grid image view. So what did we say it was? WX, oh no, it was GUI navigable mouse event, so that does exist, M. And we need to give it an event name. So this is how WX widgets requires, and we'll call this one left down. So what we're doing tonight is not necessarily immediately functional, but it's actually quite useful. And we've got to give it an ID. What does the ID mean? ID. Don't know what an ID does, but it defaults to 0. Let's just leave it like that. So we're going to create a mouse down event. Oh, that's in some sort of namespace, isn't it? GUI navigable. So we create a mouse event and we tell it what type of mouse event, and that's some glorious WX widgets macro sorting that out. When did OLC VX2D get a strip method? Probably about PGE 1.0. Ben Eater, yeah, his videos are pretty cool, aren't they? I don't think I personally want to do everything on breadboard, given you can get PCBs made for almost nothing, and all of the design software is entirely free. But it's a fun way of passing the afternoon, I suppose. Danny, good evening. Nice to see you. Hello. Right, so we've created the mouse event. I guess we want to set some properties of it. What do we want to set? We want to set. What are our options? Set world. That sounds promising, doesn't it? V world pos. So that's the event being given a location, and I think it's also got some things for shift and control. Not worried about those yet. But how I've got to be careful with my language, haven't I? How do we actually post that event? Is it post event? Post event, I'm guessing, goes to get parent. We just want to shove it up the chain, I suppose. And then M. Okay. So the post event hopefully should just submit it now to the parent of this control, to the event hierarchy. And if nothing services it there, I believe the event then gets posted to that parent. And it goes all the way up the tree until either nothing processes it and it just evaporates, or something says, I've processed this, stop propagating. Or some things can actually say, well, I've processed this, but you know what? Some other things might want to as well, so carry on. 2.23, yeah, it's definitely there. I mean, it's been there for a while, Alter. Yeah. Yeah, it pretty much, Travis. Yeah, it's sort of the system will handle it for you. It's quite a nice way, reasonably conventional way in sort of these object-oriented GUI frameworks. But by creating our own event, of course, we can attach our own information to it, and that's what's quite useful. We could just use regular mouse events and then interrogate specific controls for their state, but maybe, just maybe, I've got a feeling actually creating our own events is useful for sorting things out. But now we need something to respond to that event. What's going to respond to it? Well, I'm going to go right back to the start. and go to my main frame. So this is the equivalent of my main application. This is the main window. And you can see here that I connect various controls to handle specific events that are coming in. So I want to connect my mainframe to listen to my custom events coming in and then redirect that event to some sort of event handler. And okay, we're going to have to sort of figure some of this out. So I think what we might need is two windows side by side here, because I can't remember the names of half of these things. So yeah, things are getting a bit clustered. I'll just try and make a bit more space that way. So looking at the glorious set of macros that I've got here, these look like the event handler things. What did I call my thing? Mouse event. So if I create in my mainframe.h file some sort of responder to that particular event. Now remember, it looks and feels like a WXWidgets event. So void on, in this case, it's going to be tile select. Now this event could get thrown from anywhere. This is what we're going to call it today, just for a test. We'll probably have to refactor some of this. And we'll what was the event type? It was a GUI navigable mouse event, EVT. Right, so that's our actual event handler. Quick actions refactoring, go and throw that into mainframe somewhere. So we'll do the same thing here, because I think we can log.debug. And we'll do event received. And we'll get the event was EVT. Because it's a mouse event, we can get world .str. So we can identify that there's two different sort of events floating around the system. The first one was sort of deliberately printed in that on mouse left down, and this one's being handled by something that's going to listen to it. But now this is the bit that I can never remember the syntax. We need to connect our mainframe here to the sort of fundamental event handling subsystem of WXWidgets, and I can't remember how to do it. So connect something. Now looking at these things here, these kind of look important, don't they? Nav panel mouse move handler. Well, that looks like these. So I'm guessing that this is actually this event name. So what did we call this? Okay, which one do we have? On mouse left down. Oh, I gave them names that were easy to remember, didn't I? Of course I did. So connect. If you receive an event of this type, GUI navigable event panel mouse left down, then call the event left down handler. Ooh, I wonder if it's going to find this, because I'm guessing this is kind of hidden somewhere, is it? Where is that hidden? That's a hash define. This is creating a macro inside that namespace. I don't even know if this is like legit stuff. We may have to go copy and paste some of this around. And the, what we call it, mainframe on tile select is the function that we're going to call. And I don't even know what these additional properties are. It says here user data. Well, I'm just going to put in a null and a this, because that's what all the others have done. Don't even know. But I've got a big red squiggly under this because, what does it say? This expands to WX event function cast. Oh. Sean, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. That's also very loud in my left ear. I think for the subscribe, we should have the Bixie theme again one more time. There we go. Yeah, I don't know how do I actually access these things. These are defined inside a GUI navigable namespace. I guess that doesn't matter, right? Or it shouldn't. Or is it just everything that is defined there? Maybe I'm better off just actually taking these right out of this namespace. This is going to where all the problems start, isn't it? Put that there. Because... yeah, see, that's got rid of me red squiggle. Guessing, yeah, macros in namespaces probably were never really conceived. It doesn't seem to be giving me red squigglies everywhere, so that's an encouraging start. Right, so hopefully connect GUI navigable to that. So if this particular instance of an event handler, which is the overall frame, receives an event of that type, then redirect it to that function. Who knows? Let's click compile. I'm 50-50 whether this actually compiles because of all this macro nastiness. Should have the whole thing as the sub notify. We're just going to find every possible excuse to play it. All right, Sean. Thanks you for joining. Thank you for the subscription too. We'll be back again this time next week, and I'm always around on the Discord server. It's compiling anyway. It's compiling, everybody. It's compiling. I've forgotten what we told it to do. If we click and the event gets said, I don't even know if this is actually going to work. There's a lot of things at play here, but we're overrunning. We're overrunning. Totally. This is a very exciting time to join the stream. We're going to see what happens. Oh, it failed right at the very last minute because some sort of link error, actually. It's saying these have no body, and it's probably because in the CPP file for these things, I imagine. Let's just stick this over here as well, that these are also in some sort of... I see, we did get some green wigglies somewhere. Let's have a look. What's it saying? We've not got event type tag, unresolved external. So these are unresolved. Ugh, this is where things get a bit messy, isn't it? Oh, I wonder, is it because these declare events are in a namespace, but these aren't? So let's take those out as well. Which now means there's a fair few places where we've actually got them in the namespace, isn't it? For example, here, that's no longer valid. They're just now sort of, yeah, everywhere. Where else did we use that? We used that in grid view CPP, I think, to actually throw the event in the first place. Yeah, I need to refactor some of this and tidy it up in a sensible way. But I just want to see if we can get anything sort of functionally working. There's a morning stand-up. Well, I do a stand-up in the morning as well when I get out of bed. Ba-bum. Ba-bum. 89 people watching a compile fail slowly in silence. And Nanoic petting a chicken. Seen worse movies. Oh, I tell you, I've just finished Better Call Saul. Excellent, by the way. I fully recommend watching it. And I also watched the remake of Dune. Didn't think much of it. Sorry. Watching and judging. There we go. We got a successful build this time. Oh, it's a good job. I'm probably one of the few people on the planet that can read linker error messages and try and have a bit of a stab at solving them. It's only taken 30 years of practice, but I got there in the end. Right, does it work? Probably not. Look at that. 2 lots of events. Perfect. Right, so this first event message is being sent by the control, just throwing it out to the log, but this event received is the overall application receiving a notification that's custom that our control is throwing out there. So that means we can now start to work on things that listen to that event and do things in accordance to it. And I think that's a nice place to stop for today. So I'm going to play, do you know what? I'm going to play the Bixie thing one more time, just because we've all liked it. So if you didn't know, Bixie's a member of the Discord and he's in this chat too, and he's helping me put together a theme tune for the CodeZone. So one last time, because it's awesome. Excellent. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next week. I'll be around on the Discord server just for a little bit. Before I go, important stuff. Obviously, I've just put a video out on YouTube, which is a showcase of all of the latest stuff that's happened on the Discord server. And the OLC Code Jam is starting in 2 weeks' time. Go on over to Twitch and take part. Until then, take care.